Lovely amigos, welcome back. We've been going through the cringe list, the Michael Scott list, the very personal, hopefully inviting, fake never wins list. So I'm doing this on purpose. I'm doing this for selfish reasons, number one, and I'm doing this for unselfish reasons, number two. Hopefully, the selfish reason is, as I said at the beginning, to stay aware. I think we have to be intentional about confronting the worst parts about ourselves, because I think there's a lot of benefits to it. It's number one, when you confront the worst about yourself, you might just instigate a bit of grace and mercy and openness towards other people, right? My wife and I have this joke about who's higher on the horse, right? When we're riding the high horse. And so when we are confronted with, this is how I'm feeling, these are my actual emotions, these are the things that I'm feeling down about, whether it's external or internal, being fully self-aware of ourselves has this wonderful, miraculous power. And I think it has to do with humility. And it's almost like working towards humility. I don't know if that's possible, but I think that's what we're trying to do. And then the unselfish reason is, hopefully, as I expose some of these worst parts of my past, my present, then it can become an invitation for you to be more honest to yourself and about yourself, for you to be, again, more full of grace and humility and maybe kindness towards the people that are around you, because sometimes we're so fully aware. And I think this is one of the greatest dangers of social media. Now I sound like an old dude, but I think one of the greatest dangers of the social media is that it's making us so fully aware of others, the worst of others and the best of others. And half of the time, that worst and that best is not even true. When we see the best of others, whether how they look, about the life that they're living, of course, it's edited, it's photoshopped, it's AI now. And sometimes when we see the worst of others, of course, we're presented with small facts, and we use those small facts to completely disregard another human being. When if we were confronted with our own facts, maybe we would have a bit more grace. So this is not about excusing sin, transgression, abuse. This is not about making room, right, for us to let each other get away with anything, not even close. This is more about grace, about self-awareness, self-acceptance. And I've shared this already, but I'll remind you what I learned with my therapist, Dolan Williams. Shout out to Dolan once again. His constant thing was, you have to radically accept yourself. Sometimes the radically accepting is the worst parts of yourself. Sometimes the radically accepting is the good parts about yourself. And sometimes that radical acceptance leads you to really know yourself. And this is who I am, whether right or wrong. This is what I'm feeling. And hopefully from that place of honesty, of really being clear about yourself and about others, we can move forward. So I think we're on number 8, David. I think it's number 8. Yeah, number 8. Okay, so this is number 8. When I switched one fundamentalism for a different fundamentalism. And I'll explain it like this. James Baldwin once said, "We can disagree and still love each other, unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and the denial of my humanity and my right to exist." So I want to state from the get-go with number 8 that I really believe in having convictions, in knowing where you stand about different issues. I really, and it's part of what we do at the Happy Givers. We have this conviction about what should be doing here in Puerto Rico, about how to lead a nonprofit. We have conviction about how we serve others. We have conviction about the table being open for everybody. We have conviction about putting people over profit. And there's no doubt about it. If you talk to different people of the team, different members of our team, sometimes we're not living up to those convictions. But in general, we're trying our absolute best. These are our convictions, and this is us trying to live by those convictions. The problem is, sometimes we believe so much in those convictions that we end up disregarding the human beings that think differently to those convictions. That we end up pushing aside people that are different in their theology, in their expression of love, in the way they do family. And so when I mean switching one fundamentalism for another fundamentalism, it means that because I was a Christian pastor in a white evangelical context, I have fundamentalist theology. Am I saying it right? Fundamentalist theology, for example, about conservative values, about the LGBTQ community, about who goes to heaven and who goes to hell. And we get to a place, I got to a place, let me say it like that. I got to a place in my fundamentalism that this is what the Bible says, and Jesus is the only way, and this is how we're meant to preach and worship and give and donate, and this is how you're meant to treat me, the pastor, and this is what we're meant to be doing as a church. And you get to a place where you have so many you have to's that you forget that you get to's. You get to those places where it's like, you have to believe this, you have to agree with me, you have to give this way, and you get into this fundamentalism that excludes everybody else instead of invite others. And you actually end up excluding your true self as well. The problem is when we have a reaction to that fundamentalism, we might just end up falling for a different kind of fundamentalism. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about being in the middle. I'm not a believer in the center. I don't think the center solves anything. I much prefer have clarity on where I stand, and I much prefer have clarity on where you stand over here than dealing with people that are kind of like the in-between. I'm not an in-between kind of person. I love convictions. I love knowing where I stand, what I believe in, and communicating that. The problem is sometimes we go, and this is what happened to me. I went from this kind of fundamentalism in like evangelical Christianity, where we would say Jesus is the only way, but in a bizarre way, we're the pay toll. Jesus is the way, and if you think about a road, Jesus is the way, but my church is the pay toll. You need to pay $3.25 to get access to that pay toll, to get access to that way. And that's fundamentalism. But then I'm like, no, wait a minute. Now I'm not that. Now I'm going to be a fundamentalist on this other side, where I'm going to be almost like a reactionary fundamentalism, where I'm just reacting to all the things that I know were destructive about my past. And there's this sticker that we have shared in the past where it says, I'm sorry for everything I said as an evangelical pastor. And I do. There's so many things that I used to preach, that I used to share, that I look back and I look at them and I cringe on the inside. But I have to understand that human beings are a process, right? And that was part of my process. Do I need to repent for things that I did in that space? Yes. Do I need to correct? Do I need to address them? Do I need to make amends with people that I hurt in that space? 100% yes. But I'm not moving to that other fundamentalism to then look back at other people that are right now thinking like I used to think, and be like, never them, never those people. And they're the worst. And I can be honest about the destructive theology, about how hurtful it could have been, and how it affected me and my wife, but not from a place where I'm disregarding their humanity. Because I'm not going to become the monster that I'm criticizing. I don't want to become the thing that I'm pushing against. And now I'm actually being that, sometimes even worse. And so when you are intentional about moving away from something, make sure that in your heart of hearts, you're moving away from the something, but that doesn't mean that the people, that the humans, that the individuals in that space, somehow now they're disregarded. And again, if we go back to the quote from James Baldwin, there are times that it's helpful and healthy and godly to set boundaries, right? From where you used to be to where you are now. I'm not saying now you have to like go back right to where you were and go back to those fundamentalist spaces and now you have to be like the most generous, loving person in that space. I'm not talking about you going back to places that are dangerous. I'm not talking about you opening up your heart to things that might have been legitimately violent and destructive to you. What I'm talking about is the position of your heart and the position of my heart, about always keeping curiosity at the forefront, about always being willing to mend, to extend, to expand, to realize that we might feel so glorious now that I'm not all the way over there, and realize that maybe in 30 years we're going to be like, I'm so glad I'm not where I was 30 years ago, which could be today. And so the invitation is for humility, for an open heart, to not disregard the human being, and that might be disregard yourself or the journey that you've been, and not fall for the same spirit of fundamentalism of the I'm right and you're wrong, but in this new space. Because maybe in 20 years, you're going to be in this new space. And then 20 years after that, you're going to be in this new space. And that's a lovely thing, that we transition, that we grow, that we mature. Let that growth and maturity be always from the place of humility, not from assuming that you're stepping above other people. That gets nobody nowhere.
That's very powerful. I would like to ask you, many people feel their self of identity come from their beliefs. Sure. And they go to the extent of like canceling people around them because they don't match with them. Sure. But I would like if you can like put a train of thought, where do you put your self of identity, knowing that maybe like 15 years ago you thought totally different, and now you're humble enough to know that you may think 15 years from now totally different.
What I'm saying right now in this podcast, I might be like, erase it.
Maybe, yeah, and maybe for people that feel that their safe haven is their way of thinking, what could you tell them about how do you see your identity now as a human being? How do you see your sense of self? How can you describe that now that you know that you're not your beliefs?
Man, what a good question. Phenomenal question. It's a never-ending quest to separate, again, those convictions, those things I believe in, from the practical day-to-day. What am I actually living? Because ultimately, I believe what we live is actually what we believe. And again, good for you, good for me, good for you, David, to share different thoughts, different beliefs, different convictions from sincerity from where we are right now, which might be different from where we're going to be, different from where we were. But it's actually what we do. It's actually what we spend our time. It's actually our budget. What are you spending your money on? What are you spending your time, your energy, your effort? Who are you doing life with? I think that reveals way more about what you believe than the Twitter post, than the Facebook thing you share, than the article you read that you then share. Way more what you do. And so the challenge, my personal challenge, and one of the reasons why the Happy Giver exists is because I had this happysonship.com blog, and I'm blogging and I'm writing from that place. I was almost like in between from moving from this camp to this other camp. And I even hate to verbalize it that way, like moving from one camp to the other. But that's how it felt. That's how it felt for me. I was part of this family, and somehow because I was believing different to the family, now I don't belong to the family. Wait, I thought family, the whole point is that just because you're part of the family, you're in the family. And so I had all that brutal realization that if I didn't believe a certain way, I didn't belong in this camp. And now I'm kind of having a brutal realization in the same way in this other camp, that if I don't agree exactly with how you're saying it, how you're doing it, how you're expressing your faith, or how you're expressing about patriarchy, about racial divisions, about Israel and Palestine, about Trump and Biden, and we have consumed ourselves. And again, I think there's something beautiful about it that has been distorted, because the beautiful thing about it is that people are allowed to be more clear about where they stand and what they believe. The ugly part about it is what you're asking. It's that belief is the ultimate part of my identity. And if I don't believe this way, and not just believe this way, but while believing this way, now I need to sound exactly like the other people that believe the same thing. Now we need to like sound the same. And I think I mentioned this on the first video we did from this list. Ultimately, all we want is to belong. All we're looking for is a space and a place where we feel like I have a tribe, I have people, I have company, I belong in this room with others. I'm not alone. Ultimately, we're looking for a space to belong. Why I believe people go to insane spaces when they're in a cult and they believe things that you're like, how did you fall for that? Insane belief, theology, practice. Because ultimately, if I had that belief, practice, and theology, then I would belong. And I would do anything to belong. So, going back to your question, if the beliefs and the theology and the convictions and where I stand is the one fully determining my identity, then the belonging is always going to change depending on what you believe, where you stand in your convictions. And so I think ultimately you need to learn to love yourself, to love your process, because your process is going to take you to different spaces, to different crowds, to different communities. And then realize that it's not ultimately what you're saying you believe. It's how you're living. It's how you're loving. It's how you're forgiving. It's how you're engaging with others. It's where you're spending your money. It's where you're spending your time, your energy, your efforts. And to have so much of this, look, like whatever, I'm not perfect. And I'm changing, and I'm learning, and I'm growing, and I disagree with what David thinks, but we can still be friends. But wait a minute, now he's saying something that really affects me, and we can confront each other, and we can have challenges with each other. And there's times where you have to set boundaries, and you do have to separate, whether it's a season or forever, but always from this place of, I'm growing, and I'm learning, and I'm changing, and I'm not stuck, right, in this belief that defines my identity in a way that ruins my personhood. I'm a human being, I'm a process, and I'm okay with who I am right now. That good? Yeah, we good. Okay. So when I switch from one fundamentalism to the other, I think I said that was 8. It says it's 8 here. Number 9, when I pretended that money was not powerful. That comes, there's this weird contrast, especially in Christianity, right? And especially in the last 30 years, we had that contrast of the people that are like, no, poverty is the only way. And then the people that were like prosperity gospel, and it got disgusting in that space of prosperity gospel where these preachers are making bigger salaries than anybody else in the church, where they're getting the big bonuses. They got the best cars. They're always traveling first class. Some of them buying their own. There was that famous preacher that bought his own plane because he didn't want to be affected by the demons in commercial flights. So that's the extreme of that. And you'd be surprised to know that it's not that extreme. Unfortunately, it's too common. And then there's the other extreme where it's like money, forget about money, and don't think about money, and don't talk about money. And then you don't know how to do a budget. And then you don't know how to plan, right? For 5 years, 10 years. And it was by mistake that I had to learn, because when I'm transitioning out of church, when I was fired from the church that I was working in, where I got my salary, and I'm starting this nonprofit, and I don't want to fall for those same traps of like asking for money or trying to use emotions to manipulate people to give money. They used to give it to the church, now give it to the nonprofit. And I realized, again, by necessity, not because I was reading amazing books and coming with amazing plans, I realized how much opportunity money would give to us in the context of a nonprofit. And I'll explain. We didn't have money for not even the salary, money for the actual projects we wanted to do, for the people we wanted to serve, for the meals we wanted to deliver, for the medical clinics and whatever. We didn't have money for any of that. And you need money to make that stuff happen. And so we fell into, out of necessity, hey, let's start an online store. And we can say, honestly, 100% of the profits, the money that comes, that's a profit from this store, goes towards the nonprofit work. And we started to do it, and thankfully we hit the jackpot, because it was at that time, not many people had online stores, and Facebook was booming, and our blog was doing really well. HappySonship.com was doing well. So there was enough of an audience, there was enough of an interest in the things that we were writing, we were saying, where then the products came, and then the money actually helped us to build what we have. And so we want to constantly challenge ourselves. I keep saying we. I want to constantly challenge myself. Because I had, and I'll give you some insight into my personal life. We had an accountant, this was 4 years ago, when the store was really booming. And she did all the paperwork for the nonprofit, and she did all the numbers. And her thing was like, why are you guys not millionaires? You're bringing in millions of dollars. You and your wife could be millionaires. And everything in me went like, oh, that'd be nice, because it's good money. And why couldn't I? And I'm coming out of the church world, right, where it's like, no, don't be too rich. You got to be controlling your riches. And now I'm actually producing between the store and the writing and the book sales and the different opportunities to speak where I was getting good honorariums. What we decided, and this is what we decided as a family, we're going to have a board. The nonprofit board is going to set a salary for Catherine and I. And everything that I bring, and now I'm talking Carlos A. Rodriguez Sotre, everything that I bring between book sales, between speaking engagements, between the artworks that I create to sell at the Happy Givers, between the different connections and networks that I make with different people that can give donations, 100% of that will go to the nonprofit. And I'm just going to take a salary. And it's not going to be a miserable salary so that I'm constantly like, I have such a little salary. It's a salary that's dignified for me, for my wife, for my children. It's a salary that I can say, I'm taken care of. And yet at the same time, if a year, which happened a couple of years ago, $3 million were brought in, I can honestly say that money, between our creativity, our hard work, and it's not just me, the individual now, a team of people making things happen, bringing millions of dollars to do, and I keep looking, right? I'm looking at you and I keep looking this way because I'm on like the second story and I can see where the production of the online store happens over here. We can bring all this money and that can literally translate to a new farm that started 16 months ago that's producing so much, that then goes into the kitchen to hire local cooks that are cooking amazing meals. Right now we made sancocho, which is this Puerto Rican like stew that has all these wonderful root vegetables. It literally happened a couple of minutes ago. And the team, it's getting paid. They get paid vacation. They get to put in money into their social security. They get to, right? We get to like honor them in this space, living close by. That then food gets delivered to families all around this area in Vega Alta and Vega Baja, the two towns. All that to say, I'm proud that we're bringing millions of dollars in to do incredible work. And I don't have to either be the hoarder over here that is like, how much more can I get for myself? And yet I don't have to be this like no money, like money is not important. No, it's extremely powerful. And it has actually empowered us to do the work that we wanted to do. Am I still on the journey? All the time. Still on the journey of discovering, how much can we actually produce? How much, and we've talked about this, David and I have talked about this, how much do we spend on the actual business to bring money in? How much of the content is about growing a personal brand, growing the brand of the nonprofit? How much is it about the projects that we're doing, right? I'm constantly in this, I find, is a beautiful battle of challenging myself, of knowing what are my actual priorities. And like we've said hundreds of times, are we actually living the culture that we're promoting? Is it really people over profit? Is it really a long table where everybody's included? Is it really loving my neighbor? Because loving my neighbor means investing time, money, effort. Loving my neighbor sometimes means I'm going to get less so that the employees can get paid. You get what I'm saying, right? Stop pretending money's not powerful. And hopefully, maybe, we've done it in the past online. We've done different programs, online courses, teach people how to start their online stores, teach people how to start their own nonprofits. Maybe you're watching this. Maybe you've been following our journey and somehow it's inspired you. My hope is that it has inspired you, and that if you do have a specific concern, and I always say this statement, this expression, whatever frustrates you invites you into something. Your frustration can become an invitation. And hopefully you're seeing things on the news. You're seeing there's an unhoused crisis in your community. There's all these issues in the Middle East. There's things that are happening within your context and you're desperate to do. You're frustrated because the church is not doing it, because other nonprofits are not doing it, because the politicians are not doing it. And I share in your frustration, but maybe that frustration is an invitation for you to get the resources, to get trained, to get empowered, to bring money in, to then do those things that you're expecting other people to do. Maybe the invitation's for you to do them yourself. So, little snippet there about what we're constantly struggling with. All right, one more for this one. When I forgot to take care of myself. And this is not just in the context, as we talked in the first one, we talked about going to therapy, dealing with mental health. I'm talking just like, what are the books that you like to read? Like, what are the things that you enjoy doing on your day to day? And when I had this weird illusion that every meeting was the most important meeting in the world, and that every project that we had was the most important project. It was so important that it's more important than me enjoying that Netflix show with my wife, that it's more important than me just like going to the beach with my kids and enjoying time in the ocean with them. And we create these unnecessary burdens. And some of the projects that we're doing here are extremely important, and they're going to be super beneficial for a whole community that is in need of a lot of things. But that weird, like somehow we're saviors and somehow we need to sacrifice our day to day to achieve something, when sometimes we just need to take care of ourselves. The problem with when we don't take care of ourselves, and I keep doing we, and I'm talking about myself, okay? So that's not bad. So I'm going to read it. When I didn't take care of myself, I ended up bitter and angry and burnt out. And then I started to blame other people, because that's the problem. You haven't made time for yourself, and then it's everybody else's fault you haven't made time for yourself. My wife is too demanding. My kids are expecting too much. My friends are these clingy friends, and my family, and this, and my job, and all those things there could be elements of truth in that, but it's your responsibility to take care of yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Not even the people that love you the most. It's not on them, because if you put it on them, that's not an element of love that you're doing. You're putting a responsibility that belongs to you. What's the book that you've been dying to read? Just order it. Get it. See if a friend has it. Borrow it. And just take time. Like, read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, and help yourself actually develop some habits of self-care, of going to the gym in the morning or the afternoon or the evening. If you don't like the gym, then don't go to the gym. But what about the 20-minute walk, right? What about the headphones in and the songs that you've been wanting to listen to? What about that place that you wanted to try, that new restaurant? Or what about you don't even have to spend $1. Just a stroll with the family members that you love, that phone call that you're literally going to say, I'm going to call that friend. I love hanging out with that friend. We haven't made time for each other. It's really hard to make time right now. Well, what about a 20-minute phone call? Just to talk, just to connect, just to take care of my heart. And in a way, I'm telling you right now, the more you take care of yourself, this is just like action and reaction. The more like energy and willingness you have to help, to serve, and to love others. So my invitation to you, because it's constantly my invitation to myself, and I'm doing pat on the back. I'm doing a really good job now. When I leave work and it's go here, and I'm moving, I'm having different conversations, and I'm recording, and I'm working with the artwork, and I'm walking the farm with the farmers, and there's a lot of beautiful things that are happening. But I'm doing a good job. When I get home, it's like job. And I'm reading lots of books, and I'm watching different shows with my wife and with the kids. I love cooking, so I'm cooking. I'm inviting friends over when I'm cooking so they can come and eat with us. And so I'm making time, intentional time, to take care of myself, because when I take care of myself, I do a much better job at taking care of others. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.